The ocean floor is a graveyard of secrets, but nothing prepared the recovery teams for what they found 70 feet beneath the Atlantic silt in early 1986. While the world watched the Challenger disintegrate into a white plume of smoke, the real horror was just beginning in the silent, freezing depths where the crew cabin had settled. Most people assume the 7 astronauts died instantly in a fireball, yet the physical evidence pulled from the wreckage tells a much darker, more resilient story of the final 2 minutes. We are diving into the classified recovery logs to uncover the haunting details of what was actually left behind when the smoke cleared. The Challenger disaster wasn't an explosion in the way you think, but a structural failure that turned a billion-dollar spacecraft into a falling tomb. When the external tank collapsed, the orbiter didn't vaporize. It was torn apart by aerodynamic forces, leaving the reinforced crew compartment largely intact for its long plunge. This meant that for the recovery divers, the mission wasn't just about collecting scrap metal, but navigating a pressurized nightmare of twisted steel and human remains. What they discovered inside those jagged walls would change NASA's safety protocols forever and haunt the rescuers for the rest of their lives. The recovery team discovered that the crew cabin did not actually explode during the initial breakup of the shuttle on January 28, 1986. Engineers realized the reinforced aluminum shell was strong enough to withstand the aerodynamic shredding that destroyed the rest of the vehicle. This meant the astronauts were likely alive and conscious as they began a terrifying 2-minute freefall toward the Atlantic Ocean. Divers found 3 of the crew's personal egress air packs had been manually activated by the astronauts after the shuttle broke apart. Specifically, the air pack belonging to pilot Michael Smith was turned on by mission specialist Ellison Onizuka, proving they were functional enough to help each other. This detail was kept from the public for months to avoid the grim reality of their final moments. The impact with the water occurred at over 200 miles per hour, creating a force of 200 Gs that instantly crushed the cabin. Search teams located the remains of the compartment in March 1986, resting under 65 feet of water and buried in thick black mud. The deceleration was so violent that the structural integrity of the cabin finally failed upon hitting the surface. Recovery ships used side-scan sonar to locate a debris field that stretched over 400 square miles across the Florida coast. The USS Preserver was the primary vessel tasked with the grim job of bringing the crew members back to the surface. Divers had to work in shifts because the emotional toll of seeing the wreckage was deemed too high for long-term exposure. One of the most chilling finds was Michael Smith's seat, which had several switches flipped into positions that were not part of the launch sequence. These manual overrides suggested he was desperately trying to restore electrical power to the cockpit while the cabin was plummeting. It proved that the pilot was fighting to save the ship until the very second they hit the water. The remains were found still strapped into their flight seats, which had been bolted to the floor of the mid-deck and flight deck. Because the cabin remained pressurized for a portion of the fall, the bodies were remarkably preserved compared to the external shuttle components. This made the identification process much faster, but significantly more traumatic for the medical examiners at Patrick Air Force Base. NASA investigators recovered a blue flight suit sleeve that was found tangled in the wreckage of the right-hand side of the cockpit. Forensic analysis confirmed it belonged to Krista McAuliffe, the teacher who was supposed to be the first civilian in space. Finding personal items like this forced the agency to confront the human cost of their engineering shortcuts and O-ring failures. The search for the remains was so secretive that the Navy used a specialized underwater robot named Gemini to scout the area first. This ROV captured high-resolution footage of the cabin floor, which was littered with personal lockers and mission checklists. The footage was immediately classified and has never been released to the general public due to its sensitive nature. Divers reported that the interior of the recovered cabin was filled with a tangled web of wires and insulation that made movement nearly impossible. They had to use hydraulic shears to cut through the debris just to reach the areas where the astronauts were located. The darkness of the ocean floor made the task of identifying human remains among the machinery a slow process. A heavily damaged flight helmet was recovered from the silt, showing signs of extreme thermal distress and mechanical crushing. While the cabin didn't burn, the friction of the fall and the eventual impact caused massive structural deformation to the protective gear. This helmet became a symbol in the internal investigation of how little protection the crew actually had during a breakup. The recovery of Gregory Jarvis was particularly difficult because his remains were found outside the main cabin structure near the ocean floor. He had been seated on the middeck, and the force of the water impact caused a breach in the hull right next to him. It took divers several extra days of searching the surrounding mud to locate and identify him properly. Investigators found that the emergency oxygen systems had been depleted by nearly 6 minutes of use in some cases. Since the fall only lasted about 2.5 minutes, this suggested the astronauts were breathing from the packs while still on the pad. This discovery highlighted the extreme stress the crew was under, even before the shuttle cleared the launch tower. The remains were transported to the shore in specialized containers draped in American flags to maintain the dignity of the fallen. A motorcade of 7 hearses met the recovery ships at Port Canaveral under heavy military guard to prevent any unauthorized photography. This was the largest and most expensive forensic recovery mission in the history of the United States Navy. One of the strangest items recovered was a small container of school supplies that Krista McAuliffe had packed for her lessons. Despite the violent impact, several of the items were found intact inside a locker that had been shielded by the middeck F-floor. These mundane objects served as a haunting reminder of the educational mission that ended in a national tragedy. Forensic teams had to use dental records and DNA sampling, which was still in its infancy in 1986, to confirm identities. The extreme pressure of the deep-sea environment had caused significant changes to the physical state of the remains over the 2 months they were submerged. Every piece of biological evidence was treated as a high-priority national security asset during the investigation. The black box of the shuttle, known as the Operational Instrumentation Recorder, was found near the crew remains but was severely water damaged. Engineers at IBM spent weeks drying out the magnetic tape to recover the final seconds of data from the cockpit. The recording ended abruptly, confirming that the electrical system failed the moment the cabin hit the Atlantic. Divers found a wedding ring belonging to one of the astronauts embedded in the control panel of the flight deck. The force of the impact had fused metal and personal effects together in a way that defied normal physics. It took specialized tools to extract the jewelry without damaging the surrounding hardware needed for the technical accident investigation. The recovery mission officially ended on April 16, 1986, after nearly all identifiable remains had been brought to the surface. NASA made the controversial decision to bury the remaining unidentifiable debris and organic matter in a sealed Minuteman missile silo. This silo, located at Cape Canaveral, remains a restricted site and serves as a permanent underground tomb. A mission patch from the Challenger's STS-51L flight was found floating inside a pocket of air within a piece of the fuselage. The nylon material had survived the salt water and the heat, looking almost brand new when it was pulled from the sea. This specific patch is now kept in a private collection at the Smithsonian, away from public display. The autopsy reports for the 7 astronauts were never fully released to the public, leading to decades of conspiracy theories. NASA fought several lawsuits from media outlets to keep the specific details of the trauma signatures classified to protect the families. The official stance remains that the cause of death was undetermined, due to the violence of the water impact. During the 2022 filming of a History Channel documentary, divers accidentally found a 20-foot section of the Challenger's fuselage near the original crash site. This was the first major piece of the shuttle found in over 30 years, proving the ocean still holds fragments of the disaster. NASA confirmed the serial numbers match the left-hand side of the orbiter's payload bay. The final resting place for the identified remains of the crew is Arlington National Cemetery, where a memorial was dedicated in late 1986. 2 of the astronauts, Dick Scobie and Michael Smith, are buried in individual plots near the main monument. The site remains one of the most visited locations in the cemetery, honoring the 7 who gave everything for the stars.